Blood on polished wood. That was Zora Harris's first sensation as her cheek slammed against the courtroom floor, consciousness slipping away like water through fingers. 3 men in expensive suits smiled from the defendant's box. They'd threatened to destroy her for months. Now they watched her collapse with the satisfaction of predators seeing prey finally surrender. "The witness appears unwell," the judge announced, his voice distant through the roaring in her ears. Zora's final thought before darkness claimed her: they've won. It's over. But then, hushed gasps rippled through the courtroom. A man in black rose from the shadows, his movement silencing even the judge. Seoul's most feared criminal, Jin Park, approached her fallen body with lethal grace. Security reached for weapons as he knelt beside her, his scarred hands surprisingly gentle as he cradled her head. "Don't touch her," a court officer ordered. Jin Park looked up, his eyes obsidian and merciless. "This woman saved my life," he announced, voice cutting through the chamber. "And these men," he pointed toward the defendants, whose smiles had vanished, "they didn't just falsify drug trials, they murdered my sister." If you are listening right now, please subscribe to Heart of Seoul and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Tell me in the comment where you are watching from. Now let's continue. The microphone that had slipped from Zora's fingers emitted a piercing shriek of feedback that cut through the stunned silence. The judge's gavel slammed down, but the sound seemed distant, underwater, as Zora struggled to remain conscious. 4 months of death threats, 4 months of looking over her shoulder on Seoul's rain-slicked streets, 4 months of nightmares that left her sheets drenched in sweat, all leading to this moment that was slipping away as her consciousness faded. Jin's footsteps were unhurried, deliberate, cutting through the chaos. The crowd parted like water before flame as he moved. His obsidian suit absorbed light rather than reflected it. His face, sharp angles and winter shadows, betrayed nothing as he approached. The infamous head of Seoul's most feared organization moved with the liquid grace of a predator, each step causing the court officers to tense their hands over holstered weapons. Whispers rippled through the gallery. Even the judge fell silent. Jin Park, the man whose name was only spoken in hushed tones, who had never been successfully prosecuted despite decades of allegations, knelt beside Zora's trembling body. His movement was smooth, precise, a tiger lowering itself to inspect something curious. He leaned close, his breath warm against her ear, words meant only to her. "I found you," he whispered, and something in his voice, a tremor of raw emotion, cut through her fading consciousness. "This years." His hand closed around hers, warm, steady, a tether to consciousness. "The people who hurt you once hurt me too," he continued, so softly that not even the court recorder could capture his words. "I've been searching for you since that night in Busan, the woman who saved my life and disappeared." With those words, Zora's eyes fluttered open, recognition dawning like a slow sunrise across her face. The courtroom erupted into chaos, but in that moment, only they existed. "You," she breathed, a single tear tracking down her cheek. Because as Zora stared up at the face of Seoul's most feared man, the impossible question burned between them. How could the woman fighting to bring down corrupt businessmen have saved the life of the city's most notorious criminal? And why, after finding her at last, was Jin Park prepared to risk everything to protect her? 4 hours after her collapse, Zora sat in the hospital bed, fingers tracing her IV line. The doctor's diagnosis was clinical: dehydration, exhaustion, but failed to capture how fear had been consuming her for months. Seoul's skyline glittered outside her window, a city that never felt like home. She'd come here 3 years ago for a prestigious dance fellowship, defying her parents, a surgeon father and judge mother, who had mapped out her medical career since birth. For a while, she'd found freedom in dance. Then came that night in the Park Moon Pharmaceutical Lab, which shared a building with her ballet company. Through an observation window, she'd witnessed the CFO and research director administering experimental drugs to a distressed patient covered in angry rashes. The woman had pleaded for them to stop as they injected her again, falsifying readings on the monitoring equipment. Days later, Zora recognized the patient in the news, dead from unexpected complications. Her research connected dozens of similar deaths in Park Moon's groundbreaking treatment program, all while the company submitted falsified safety data. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Detective Hae-jin entered, the only officer who hadn't dismissed her testimony. "Jean Park visited you in court today," Hae-jin said gravely. "Do you understand what that means?" "Everyone in Seoul knows who Jean Park is," Zora whispered. "Then you understand my concern." Hae-jin leaned closer. "Whatever connection you have to him is now public." What Hae-jin didn't know was that 3 years ago, on a rain-soaked night in Busan, Zora had saved a stranger's life, a man she now knew was Jean Park. "He said I saved his life," Zora admitted quietly. Before Hae-jin could respond, Min-ho, Zora's former dance partner, arrived with fresh clothes. His face was tight with worry. "The whole company is talking about what happened." He hesitated. "Eun-ji sends her love but couldn't come. Her father—" "I know," Zora nodded. Eun-ji's congressman father had ties to the very executives she was testifying against. Her phone lit up with a message. "You had powerful enemies. Now you have powerful protectors. Neither will save you from what's coming." Hae-jin's expression darkened as she read it. "You can't stay here." "Where would I go?" Zora asked. Her apartment had been broken into twice. The ballet had placed her on indefinite leave. Before Min-ho could answer, the door opened. A tall man in an impeccable suit entered. Tae-woo-sung, Jin Park's right-hand man. "Miss Harris," he said with a slight bow, "Mr. Park requests your presence for your protection." Hae-jin stepped between them. "She's under police protection." "With respect, detective, your department has a concerning leak." The lights in the corridor flickered ominously. "I need to know why he cares," Zora said. "What happened in Busan? It was dark, raining. Why has he been looking for me?" Tae-woo's expression softened. "Because you didn't just save his life that night, you changed it." He extended his hand, and now he intends to return the favor. The choice crystallized before her: trust the system that had failed her, or accept help from the devil she apparently already knew. The black sedan glided through Seoul's rain-slicked streets, wipers cutting rhythmic arcs through the downpour. Zora sat rigid in the back seat, her reflection ghost-like in the tinted windows. Tae-woo drove in silence, his eyes occasionally meeting hers in the rearview mirror. Detective Hae-jin had protested, of course. Min-ho had begged her not to go. But something deeper than logic had guided her decision, a pull toward completion, toward answers only Jin Park could provide. "Where are we going?" she finally asked as they left the city center. "Somewhere safe," Tae-woo replied. "Somewhere they won't look." The car climbed into the hills overlooking Seoul, finally stopping before an unassuming gate set into a stone wall. No cameras, no guards, nothing to suggest the residence of Korea's most notorious criminal figure, just elegant simplicity and strategic invisibility. Inside, the traditional Hanok house was a study in contrasts, centuries-old architecture housing subtle modern comforts. Soft lighting cast amber shadows across polished wood. The rain drummed against the roof tiles, creating a cocoon of white noise that somehow intensified the silence between them. Jin Park stood waiting in the central courtyard, sheltered beneath the wooden eaves. He'd changed from his court attire to simpler clothes, dark pants, a gray sweater that softened his imposing presence without diminishing it. "Miss Harris," he said with a slight bow, "Mr. Park, thank you for trusting me." "I don't," she replied honestly, "but I'm running out of options." Something like approval flickered across his face. Honesty, rare in my world. He gestured toward the main room. "Please." Inside, a simple meal had been prepared. Jin waited until she was seated before joining her.
3 years ago in Busan, he began without preamble. You pulled me from a burning car after an ambush. You dragged me into an alley before the second explosion. You used your dancer scarf to stop my bleeding. Zora's breath caught. How do you know I was a dancer? You told me, before you disappeared. His eyes, darker than she remembered, held hers. You said you had to get back to Seoul, to your company, that you weren't supposed to be in Busan at all. The memory crystallized. The rain, the smoke, his blood on her hands. I thought you were unconscious. I was, coming in and out. His fingers touched a scar along his jawline. When I woke properly, you were gone. My people searched, but whoever you were, you'd vanished. And now, she asked, why involve yourself in my case? Jin set down his chopsticks. Because the men you're testifying against aren't just falsifying pharmaceutical safety data. They're using Park Moon's research division for something far more dangerous. He slid a file across the table. Experimental neurological compounds tested on unwitting patients, drugs that were rejected globally for catastrophic side effects. Zora's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were photographs of the same executive she'd seen that night, meeting with a North Korean operative. Your testimony about witnessing their illegal testing was getting too close to exposing something bigger, Jin continued. That's why they've been trying to silence you. And why do you care? She whispered. His answer changed everything. Because they killed my sister 5 years ago, when she discovered the same operation. She was a research scientist who refused to participate. And because Park Moon's chairman is my father, a father who would sacrifice his own son to protect his empire. The rain intensified outside, the sound amplifying the weight of his revelation. Your fight became my fight the moment you saved me, even before I knew who you were. Jin's estate felt suspended between worlds, traditional architecture with subtle modern security that Zora could sense but not see. For 3 days, she'd moved through its quiet rooms like a ghost, watched over by silent staff who materialized when needed and vanished just as quickly. Jin himself was an enigma, present yet distant, attentive yet guarded. He'd provided her with everything she could need, including case files that reinforced what she already knew. Park Moon Pharmaceuticals had been falsifying data for years, their newest neurological treatment causing devastating side effects they'd systematically covered up. What he hadn't provided were answers about himself. On the 4th morning, Zora found him in the courtyard, practicing forms that resembled Tai Chi, but with sharper edges. His movements were precise, controlled, a study in restrained power. You move like a dancer, Zora observed from the doorway.
Jin completed his sequence before acknowledging her. My mother taught me, before she died. Was she a dancer? A martial arts master. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. And yes, also trained in traditional dance. She believed they were 2 expressions of the same discipline. Zora stepped into the courtyard. You mentioned your sister was a research scientist at Park Moon. Jin's expression hardened. Ji-yeon. She discovered the neurological damage their new compound was causing. When she threatened to go public, my father... His voice tightened. They made it look like a lab accident. I'm sorry, Zora said quietly. Jin studied her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. Your testimony connects their current drug trials to what Ji-yeon discovered. That's why they're desperate to discredit you. But there's something else, isn't there? Something you're not telling me. Before he could answer, Tae-woo appeared with a tablet. We have a problem. Detective Kwon has been removed from your case. The screen showed a news article. Lead detective in Park Moon whistleblower case reassigned after misconduct allegations. That's impossible, Zora protested. Jin is incorruptible. Everyone has pressure points, Jin said grimly. They're isolating you, removing allies. Zora's phone rang. Min-ho's number. Don't answer, Tae-woo warned, but something in her instincts rebelled. She accepted the call. Zora? Min-ho's voice was strained, barely above a whisper. They came to the company today, Park Moon executives with their lawyers. They're claiming you stole research documents before making accusations. They have security footage of you entering restricted areas. That's fabricated, she replied, heart pounding. I know, but Zora, they mentioned Busan. They know you were there 3 years ago. Jin's eyes locked with hers. Someone's coming. I have to go. Min-ho hurried. Be careful. As the call ended, Jin approached her with new urgency. We need to move. Now. Why? What aren't you telling me? His hands closed gently around her shoulders. Because the truth about that night in Busan is what they're really afraid of, and if they know you were there, they'll do anything to silence you, even if it means exposing me. Zora realized with sudden clarity, her whistleblowing wasn't just about pharmaceutical negligence. She had unknowingly stepped into a decades-long shadow war between Jin Park and his father, a war where the collateral damage was measured in bodies and broken lives, and somehow she was at the center of it all. They fled Jin's estate through an underground passage, emerging into a sleek black SUV that waited in a service alley. Tae-woo drove while Jin monitored security feeds on his tablet. Where are we going? Zora asked. Somewhere they won't expect. Jin's eyes never left the screen. A place only Ji-yeon and I knew about. The city fell away as they climbed into densely forested mountains. After an hour of silence, they arrived at what appeared to be an abandoned research facility nestled into the hillside. My sister's private lab, Jin explained as he led her through reinforced doors. After she became suspicious of Park Moon's trials, she started duplicating their research here, documenting everything. Inside, the facility was surprisingly modern, a stark contrast to its exterior. Jin activated the systems with his fingerprint, bringing the lab humming to life. You need to see what she discovered, he said, pulling up files on a central display, and why it connects to Busan. Images appeared, molecular structures, brain scans showing progressive neural damage, and finally, Zora gasped, photos of herself from 3 years ago, entering a hotel in Busan. Why do you have surveillance photos of me? Jin's expression darkened. Ji-yeon was tracking everyone connected to the conference where Park Moon was presenting their preliminary findings. You weren't supposed to be there. The truth hit Zora like a physical blow. The ballet tour. We had a performance canceled due to venue flooding. I took a day trip to Busan to visit a friend from school. And walked into the middle of an assassination attempt. Jin pulled up another file, security footage showing a young woman who looked remarkably like Zora entering the hotel's service entrance. That's not me, Zora whispered. No, that's Soo-min. The nurse from the hospital? Confusion washed over her. Jin's voice was tight. My sister's research assistant. She was bringing evidence to me that night, evidence that Park Moon's drug was being developed for military applications, mind control, enhanced interrogation. The side effects weren't failures, they were the point. The pieces suddenly aligned in Zora's mind. They thought I was her. That's why I've been targeted. They think I have whatever she was bringing you. And now they know I'm with me, Jin's hands clenched, which means they'll assume I have it too. A notification flashed on the screen. Facial recognition match. The camera showed Soo-min entering the facility through a hidden entrance. You still trust too easily, little brother, came a voice from behind them. They turned to find Soo-min, now holding a gun. Ji-yeon isn't dead, she said with a smile that never reached her eyes. The truth is much more complicated. Jin's face drained of color. You've been working for him all along? Both sides, actually. Soo-min's gaze shifted to Zora.
You really should have stayed in Chicago, Miss Harris. Now you're going to help us finish what Ji-yeon started, whether you want to or not. You should see your face, Jin, Soo-min said, her voice eerily calm. 5 years thinking your beloved sister died exposing your father's crimes. The truth is much more complicated.
2 armed men emerged from the shadows, flanking Soo-min. With practiced efficiency, they secured Jin and Zora, binding their wrists with zip ties. Ji-yeon discovered something revolutionary, Soo-min continued, circling them. A compound that could target memory centers with surgical precision. Imagine soldiers who couldn't reveal secrets because the memories were chemically locked, spies who could pass any lie detector. The side effects were devastating, Jin spat. Brain damage, psychosis. Early versions, yes, Soo-min tapped the computer console, bringing up new molecular structures. But Ji-yeon refined it. The night in Busan, she wasn't bringing you evidence against our father, she was bringing you her breakthrough. Tae-woo's voice crackled through Jin's earpiece. Security breach at the entrance. The transmission cut off with a sickening thud. Zora's mind raced. If Ji-yeon made this breakthrough, why the charade? Why fake her death? Protection. Soo-min's smile was cold. Our father has enemies within his own organization, people who would weaponize her work before it was ready, people like Jin who see only the destruction, not the potential. A new figure entered the lab, tall, distinguished, his silver hair framing a face that mirrored Jin's in its severity. Chairman Park moved with the confidence of a man who had never known defeat. "My son," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle, "always fighting the wrong war." Jin's body trembled with barely contained rage. "You murdered innocent people, used them as test subjects." "They saved them from terminal conditions no one else could treat," the chairman replied. "Those who survived gained years of life." "At what cost?" Zora found her voice. "I saw what your drug did to that woman. She begged for death." The chairman studied her with clinical detachment. "Ms. Harris, the dancer who inadvertently saved my son's life. The coincidences that bind us are remarkable." He approached her slowly. "You have something we need." "I have nothing." "But you do." He produced a syringe filled with amber fluid. "Your memory of Busan. There was a flash drive, Ji-yeon's complete research. In the chaos, someone took it. Our surveillance shows it wasn't Jin or his people. That leaves you." Horror dawned on Zora. "You're going to drug me." "We're going to help you remember," the chairman corrected. "The prototype works beautifully now. Ji-yeon has seen to that." Jin struggled against his restraints. "Father, don't do this." The chairman's expression hardened. "Bring him." The doors opened again. 2 guards entered, dragging a battered Tae-woo between them. His face was bloodied, one eye swollen shut. "Loyalty is admirable, but costly." He nodded to one of the guards, who pressed a gun to Tae-woo's temple. "The drive, Ms. Harris, or he dies. Then we move to more invasive memory extraction." Jin's eyes met Zora's, desperation, apology, and something deeper reflected in them. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I brought you into this." The chairman checked his watch. "You have 30 seconds to decide." "Wait," Zora said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'll tell you what happened to the drive." The chairman raised his hand, halting the guard with the gun to Tae-woo's head. "In Busan, after the explosion," she continued, "when I dragged you to safety," she looked at Jin, "there was a woman there before me. She was dying. She pressed something into my hand and whispered, 'Give this to Jin Park.' I had no idea who that was. I thought she was delirious." Jin's eyes widened with realization. Ji-yeon was there. "I kept it," Zora said, meeting the chairman's calculating gaze. "Not knowing what it was, but feeling it was important. When the ambulances came, I slipped away. I didn't want to be connected to the explosion." The chairman stepped closer. "Where is it now?"
hidden inside a point shoe in my apartment. Left shoe, third pair from the right on my shelf. The drive is sewn into the box. Soo-min immediately made a call, dispatching men to retrieve it. If you're lying, the chairman left the threat hanging. I'm not, but the drive is encrypted. I tried to access it once, out of curiosity. As Soo-min and the chairman conferred quietly, Jin caught Zora's eye. He gave her an almost imperceptible nod, understanding something she had silently communicated. Because there was no flash drive in her point shoe. There was no flash drive at all. But there was something else Zora remembered from that night, something she hadn't told anyone. As she'd held Jin's bleeding body, he'd whispered a series of numbers and letters, repeating them until she promised to remember, a code she'd assumed was delirium but had memorized anyway, unable to forget the intensity in his eyes. My men will verify this, the chairman said. In the meantime, perhaps a small dose to ensure you're being truthful. He approached with the syringe, but Jin suddenly lurched forward, his bound hands catching his father's wrist. No! Jin's words cracked with emotion. She saved my life. I won't let you destroy her mind. Something shifted in the chairman's expression, not compassion, but calculation. You care for this woman. I care for the truth, and the truth is, Ji-yeon would never have completed that formula, not when she saw what it did to people. A new voice spoke from the doorway. He's right, father. Everyone turned to see a slender woman in a lab coat, her resemblance to Jin unmistakable despite the surgical alterations to her face. Ji-yeon Park stepped into the lab, her gaze moving from her father to her brother. The formula isn't finished, and it never will be. What I sent that night wasn't the breakthrough you thought. Hope flickered in Jin's eyes as his sister, the sister he'd thought dead for 5 years, stood before him. It was the antidote. Antidote? The chairman's composure cracked. What are you talking about? Ji-yeon moved further into the room, each step deliberate. I'd discovered the neural damage was irreversible, father, but I could create a compound to stop its progression, to save those already exposed. Soo-min's gun wavered. You told me we were perfecting the formula. I told you what you needed to hear, Ji-yeon replied. While you reported to my father, I encoded the antidote formula and ensured it would reach Jin. The chairman's face darkened with fury. Do you realize what you've done? The contracts we've signed, the promises I've made. To whom? Jin asked. North Korean intelligence? Military contractors? To the future, his father snapped. A world where Korea leads instead of follows. While attention focused on the family drama unfolding, Zora caught Taewoo's eye. Despite his injuries, his fingers were working methodically at his restraints. She shifted subtly, angling her bound hands toward him. The formula was killing people, father, Ji-yeon continued. Not just test subjects, researchers, lab technicians, anyone with prolonged exposure. Your own cognitive tests show degradation. The chairman faltered, his hand unconsciously moving to his temple. The headaches, Ji-yeon said softly, the memory gaps, the sudden rages, they're symptoms. A security alert flashed on the lab screens. The men sent to Zora's apartment were reporting in. No flash drive found. Soo-min turned to Zora with renewed suspicion. You lied. Of course she did, Jin said, because I gave her the code that night in Busan. All eyes turned to him. When she pulled me from the wreckage, I was clutching Ji-yeon's data key. I memorized the code before destroying it. Jin straightened, a new confidence in his posture. I've had the formula all along, in my head. The chairman lunged for his son, but years of martial arts training took over. Despite his bound hands, Jin twisted away, delivering a precise strike to his father's solar plexus that sent the older man staggering back. In the same moment, Taewoo broke free, tackling one of the guards. The lab erupted into chaos, alarms blaring, lights flickering. Zora felt hands on her restraints. Ji-yeon, cutting her free. The ventilation system, Ji-yeon whispered, pressing something into Zora's hand. Emergency purge. The code is 4479. Zora sprinted for the environmental controls, while Jin and Taewoo fought to contain the guards. She punched in the code, activating a decontamination sequence. White gas hissed from ceiling vents, quickly filling the lab. The chairman and his men collapsed first, followed by Soo-min, whose gun clattered to the floor. Sedative aerosol, Ji-yeon explained, as she handed oxygen masks to Jin, Taewoo, and Zora. It won't last long. Jin stared at his sister, years of grief and questions in his eyes. "We need to go," she said, touching his face briefly, before his backup arrives. Outside, emergency lights cast the forest in a crimson glow. "What happens now?" Zora asked. Jin's hand found hers in the darkness. "We finish what Ji-yeon started. We expose everything." 3 months later, Zora stood in the wings of Seoul's Grand Theater, her body humming with the familiar pre-performance energy. The ballet company's newest production, a contemporary piece about truth and redemption, had sold out weeks in advance. "5 minutes, Miss Harris," the stage manager called. She smoothed the costume that symbolized rebirth, a phoenix rising from ashes. After Park Moon Pharmaceutical's collapse, the arts community had rallied around her, transforming her from whistleblower to cultural hero. The evidence Ji-yeon provided had been irrefutable. Security footage, research logs, and testimony from recovered patients had led to the chairman's arrest and the company's dismantling. The experimental compounds were destroyed and Ji-yeon's antidote administered to everyone exposed. Jin had been reinstated with honors after the corruption in her department was exposed. The detective now headed a new task force investigating corporate crime. Nervous? She turned to find Jin standing behind her, elegant in a charcoal suit. In the aftermath, he had transformed too, from shadow figure to respected philanthropist, using his considerable resources to establish a foundation supporting ethical medical research. Not nervous, just present. Everything feels more vivid now. His smile, once so rare, came easier these days. Ji-yeon says that's a side effect of nearly dying. The world becomes sharper. "Speaking of your sister, how is her new research going?" "Promising. Her work on neural regeneration is already helping patients recover from the damage." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "She asked me to thank you again, for everything." The stage lights dimmed, signaling the production's beginning. "That's my cue," Zora said softly. Jin's eyes held hers. "When I was bleeding out in that alley in Busan, I thought I was hallucinating when I saw you, this beautiful stranger, hands steady despite the chaos, promising I would survive. I had no idea what I was promising. And yet you kept that promise," his hand gently cupped her face, "just as I'll keep mine to you." The promise had come weeks ago, after her testimony concluded, a quiet vow that whatever paths they chose, they would walk them together. Zora rose on point, pressing a kiss to his lips before stepping back. "Watch me dance?" "Always," he whispered. As she took center stage, moving through the opening sequence of solitude and awakening, Zora felt the weight of her journey in every movement, the fear, the courage, the discovery of strength she never knew she possessed, all flowing through her body as she danced.
In the front row, Jin watched with unwavering attention, alongside Ji-yeon, Min-ho, and Detective Hae-jin, family forged through fire. The final sequence represented hope, a future beyond survival. As the music swelled and Zora executed the triumphant leap that symbolized freedom, she knew with absolute certainty that some collapses weren't endings, but beginnings. Some truths weren't meant to destroy, but to rebuild. Some loves weren't born from perfect circumstances, but from the perfect courage to trust despite every reason not to. And sometimes, the most beautiful stories began in the most unlikely places, like a rain-soaked alley in Busan, or a silent courtroom where everything changed with a single truth revealed. Tell me in the comments how this story touched your heart, my lovelies. What moment resonated with you most? Join the Heart of Seoul by subscribing, and let's experience more journeys together.